You're overreacting as always. Can't you just get over it and move on? Bryce's dismissive words hit me like a slap across the face. I stared at him in disbelief, my chest tightening as the all-too-familiar frustration boiled within me. How many times had I pleaded with him to understand what I was going through with my health issues? How many nights did I cry myself to sleep, longing for his compassion and support? Get over it, I echoed, struggling to keep my voice steady. Bryce, I'm in constant pain. The fatigue is crippling. I can't just get over a chronic condition that modern medicine still doesn't fully comprehend. Bryce rolled his eyes, his expression a mixture of annoyance and indifference. Yeah, I've heard it all before. You really need to stop using that as an excuse for everything. My hands trembled as a wave of anger washed over me. An excuse. Did he truly believe I was making up the suffering I endured day after day, year after year? You know what? I'm done, I said, my voice quivering with pent-up emotion. I'm done trying to make you understand something you clearly have no interest in comprehending. Bryce scoffed and turned his attention back to the television, effectively dismissing me and my struggles once again. I stormed out of the living room, fighting back tears of frustration and hurt. As I made my way to the bedroom, memories of our once loving relationship flooded my mind. Where was the man who had vowed to love and support me through sickness and health? The one who had held me close and promised to always be by my side? That man was long gone, replaced by this shell of a person who seemed to care more about maintaining the perfect facade than truly being there for his wife. I collapsed onto the bed, burying my face in the pillow as sobs racked my body. How had we come to this? How had the love and understanding we once shared disintegrated into this bitter, toxic dynamic? As I lay there, a newfound determination took root within me. I couldn't continue living like this, constantly invalidated and disrespected by the person who was supposed to be my partner in life. Enough was enough. I sat up, wiping away the tears, and reached for the journal I had been keeping over the past few years. With trembling hands, I began to document this latest incident, determined to gather evidence of Bryce's emotional abuse. The dismissive comments, the lack of empathy, the constant belittling of my struggles, I would record it all. This would be the start of my journey towards reclaiming my dignity and self-worth. I would no longer be a victim, cowering in the face of Bryce's cruelty. It was time to take a stand, to expose the truth, and to seek justice for the years of pain and neglect I had endured. The words flowed from my pen, fueled by a potent mix of anger, heartache, and a newfound sense of resolve. This was the final straw, the catalyst for the upheaval that was about to unfold. I was done being the silent, suffering wife. It was time for Bryce to face the consequences of his actions. I should have seen the signs earlier, but love can blind even the most perceptive of souls. Bryce and I had been a perfect match in the beginning, two kindred spirits, united in our hopes and dreams for the future. We'd feed off each other's energy, our laughter filling the air as we built the foundation of what we thought would be an unbreakable bond. How naive I had been. The first crack appeared shortly after our wedding, when I began exhibiting strange symptoms that no doctor could properly diagnose. The debilitating fatigue, the widespread pain, the cognitive issues. They all remained an unsolvable mystery, an invisible enemy waging war on my body and mind. At first, Bryce was sympathetic, assuring me that we would get through this together. In sickness and in health, remember, he would say, holding me close as I cried from the frustration of not understanding what was happening to me. Those tender moments became rarer as the years passed, and my condition only worsened. Bryce grew increasingly distant, frustrated by the lack of a clear solution. His patience wore thin, and the man I had fallen in love with slowly faded away, replaced by someone cold and callous. "Quit making excuses and pull yourself together," he snapped one day when I struggled to complete a simple household chore. "You're letting this supposed illness control your life." Yeah, I tried to explain, to make him understand the genuine anguish I was experiencing, but he would hear none of it. In his eyes, I had become a burden, a blight on the perfect life he had envisioned for us. Outward appearances meant everything to Bryce. He couldn't bear the thought of our family being perceived as anything less than perfect, even as our son Derek grew increasingly aware of the turmoil brewing beneath the surface. "Why is Dad always so angry with you?" Derek asked me once, his eyes full of concern. I forced a smile, not wanting to tarnish his image of his father. It's nothing, sweetheart. He's just under a lot of stress at work. The lies piled up, each one a brick in the facade Bryce was so desperate to maintain. We were the perfect family, with the perfect house and the perfect life. At least, that's what we wanted the world to believe. Behind closed doors, the reality was far more sinister. You're pathetic, you know that? Bryce snarled at me one evening after I had spent the day bedridden, too weak and in too much pain to function. This is just a convenient way for you to be lazy and avoid your responsibilities. His words cut deeper than any knife, reopening the wounds of inadequacy that his emotional abuse had inflicted over the years. I wanted to scream, to hurl every ounce of anguish back in his face, but the strength had long since been drained from me. So I remained silent, my tears the only outward display of the turmoil raging within. That's when I knew the man I had married was gone, consumed by his obsession with maintaining the illusion of perfection. The love and support I had once treasured had been replaced by disdain and contempt, all because I couldn't meet his warped expectations. In that moment, a small spark of defiance ignited within me, a glimmer of determination that would grow into an all-consuming blaze. I wouldn't stay trapped in this toxic cycle any longer. One way or another, I would strip away Bryce's carefully constructed facade and expose the ugliness that festered beneath. He would face the consequences of his actions, of the years of emotional torment he had inflicted upon me. The road ahead would be arduous, but I knew in my heart that it was the only path to reclaiming my dignity and self-worth. The mask of perfection would shatter, and the truth would finally be laid bare, no matter the cost. The facade Bryce had so carefully constructed was beginning to crumble. As my health deteriorated further, it became impossible for me to keep up the charade of being the perfect wife and homemaker. Simple tasks like cooking and cleaning left me utterly drained, my body feeling like a lead weight that refused to cooperate. Of course, this only added fuel to Bryce's disdain. What's the point of having you around if you can't even take care of basic household duties? He sneered, surveying the pile of unwashed dishes in the sink. I wanted to explain, to make him understand the sheer effort it took for me just to get through each day, but I knew it would fall on deaf ears. Bryce had made up his mind about my condition long ago. In his eyes, it was nothing more than a convenient excuse. I'm sorry, I mustered, hating how weak and defeated I sounded. I'll try harder, I promise. Bryce scoffed and shook his head in disgust. Save your empty promises. You've been trying harder for years, yet nothing ever changes. The venom in his words cut deep, but I remained silent, too emotionally and physically drained to engage in another fruitless argument. As the weeks passed, Bryce's insults and complaints escalated, each one chipping away at what little self-worth I had left. I found solace in my journal, pouring out the anguish and frustration that I couldn't voice aloud. It was during one of these writing sessions that Derek knocked on my bedroom door, a concerned look etched on his face. Mom, are you okay? I heard Dad yelling at you again. I fought back the tears that threatened to spill and forced a reassuring smile. Everything's fine, honey. Your father's just been under a lot of stress lately. Derek didn't look convinced, but he nodded slowly, his eyes filled with a sadness that no child should ever have to bear. As he left, I couldn't help but wonder how much of Bryce's behavior he had witnessed over the years. Had I been naive in thinking I could shield him from the harsh reality of our crumbling marriage? That night, as Bryce slept soundly beside me, I stayed awake, my mind racing with a newfound determination. I couldn't continue living like this, constantly demeaned and belittled by the man who was supposed to love and cherish me. Enough was enough. I reached for my journal, the pages now filled with a meticulous documentation of Bryce's emotional abuse. Every cutting remark, every dismissive gesture, every act of cruelty laid bare in ink. As I flipped through the pages, a sense of empowerment washed over me. This was my evidence, my ammunition in the battle I was about to wage against the man who had made my life a living hell. I wouldn't be the silent, suffering wife any longer. It was time to take action, to expose Bryce for the monster he had become and seek justice for the years of pain and neglect he had inflicted upon me. The first step would be to confide in my sister, Jenna. She had always been my rock, my unwavering support system through the darkest of times. With her by my side, I knew I would have the strength to face whatever lay ahead. A plan began to form in my mind, the pieces slowly falling into place. I would gather every shred of evidence, every damning proof of Bryce's vile behavior, until I had an airtight case against him. Then, and only then, would I strike, shattering his carefully constructed facade and exposing the ugliness that festered beneath. It would be a long and arduous road, but I was ready to fight. For too long, I had been the victim, cowering in fear and shame. But no more. This time, justice would be mine. Our 20th wedding anniversary should have been a joyous occasion, a celebration of the love and commitment that had carried us through 2 decades of marriage. Instead, it became a painful reminder of how far Bryce and I had drifted apart. He had insisted on going out to an upscale restaurant, wanting to maintain the facade of a happy, successful couple in front of our friends and family. I had reluctantly agreed, knowing full well that any objection on my part would only ignite another heated argument. As I slowly made my way down the stairs, the simple act of getting dressed and ready had left me utterly drained. Bryce was waiting at the bottom, drumming his fingers impatiently against his watch. "It's about time," he grumbled, eyeing my weary appearance with disdain. "We're already running late." I mustered an apologetic smile, too exhausted to offer any excuses. We made our way to the restaurant in silence, the tension between us palpable. The evening only grew more excruciating as it progressed. Bryce basked in the attention of our guests, regaling them with tales of his career successes, while I sat quietly, sipping water to quell the nausea that had taken hold. At one point, our friend Jennifer turned to me with a warm smile. "Marla, you must be so proud of Bryce and everything he's accomplished." Before I could respond, Bryce cut in with a bitter chuckle. If only she put in half as much effort into our marriage as I do at work. The table fell silent, a collective tension hanging in the air. I felt the blood drain from my face as Bryce's words sank in, each one a dagger to my already fragile heart. "Excuse me?" I managed, my voice barely above a whisper. Bryce shook his head in mock disappointment. "Come on, Marla. We all know you've been using your little condition as an excuse to be lazy and neglect your duties as a wife." The venom in his tone was unmistakable, laying bare the contempt he harbored for me and my struggles. I wanted to scream, to hurl his cruelty back in his face, but the shock had rendered me mute. Our friends and family shifted uncomfortably, averting their gazes as the once celebratory atmosphere turned toxic. No one dared to intervene, to call out Bryce's abhorrent behavior. He leaned back in his chair, a self-satisfied smirk playing on his lips. "See? She can't even defend herself. Pathetic." Those words would haunt me for years to come, searing themselves into my memory like a brand. In that moment, everything became crystallized. The years of emotional abuse, the gaslighting, the utter disregard for my well-being. As I sat there, humiliated and defeated, something within me shifted. A fire ignited in the depths of my soul, a burning rage that had been simmering for far too long. Enough was enough. I would no longer be Bryce's punching bag, his victim to be ridiculed and demeaned at his whim. The gloves were coming off, and I would stop at nothing to bring him to his knees, to make him suffer as he had made me suffer for so long. The rest of the evening passed in a blur, my mind already plotting my vengeance. Bryce continued to revel in his cruelty, oblivious to the storm brewing within me. As we arrived home, I went straight to my room, locking the door behind me. I reached for my journal, my hands trembling, as I began to document every agonizing detail of the night's events. This would be the tipping point, the catalyst that would set my plan into motion. Bryce had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed, and he would pay dearly for his transgressions. I would gather every shred of evidence, every recorded instance of his emotional and psychological torture. Then, when the time was right, I would unleash it all upon him, shattering his world and leaving him to contend with the consequences of his actions. No more suffering in silence, no more being the victim. It was time for Bryce to face the wrath he had so recklessly provoked. In the days following our disastrous anniversary dinner, I could feel a shift taking place within me. The years of pent-up anger and resentment had finally reached a boiling point, igniting a fire that burned with the intensity of 1,000 suns. Bryce, oblivious as ever, carried on as if nothing had happened. He went about his daily routine, leaving for work each morning with a casual, "See you later," tossed over his shoulder. Meanwhile, I stewed in my righteous fury, meticulously documenting every instance of his cruelty in my journal. It was during one of these writing sessions that Jenna stopped by unannounced. She took one look at my reddened eyes and the turmoil etched into my features before enveloping me in a tight embrace. "Oh, Marla," she murmured, her voice laced with concern. "What's going on?" I pulled away, steeling myself against the torrent of emotion that threatened to spill forth. "It's Bryce," I began, the words tumbling out in a rush. He humiliated me, Jenna, in front of everyone at our anniversary dinner." Jenna's brow furrowed as I recounted the painful details, her expression darkening with each word. By the time I had finished, her hands were balled into tight fists, trembling with barely contained rage. "That bastard," she hissed, her eyes blazing with a protective fury. "How could he treat you like that? After everything you've been through?" I shook my head, feeling a sudden surge of determination. "I can't live like this anymore, Jenna. The emotional abuse, the constant belittling, it has to stop." Jenna nodded, her jaw set in a firm line. "You're right. Enough is enough. What are you going to do?" A plan had already begun to take shape in my mind, a meticulously crafted blueprint for revenge. "I'm going to gather evidence," I explained, my voice steady and resolute. "Every recording, every journal entry, every shred of proof of Bryce's cruelty. Then, when the time is right, I'm going to unleash it all and watch his world crumble around him." Jenna's eyes widened, a mixture of shock and admiration flickering across her features. "Marla, are you sure about this? This is a nuclear option. There's no going back once you pull the trigger." I nodded, my jaw clenched with grim determination. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Bryce needs to face the consequences of his actions, of the years of emotional torture he's put me through. He needs to be exposed for the monster he truly is. A slow smile spread across Jenna's face, a fierce pride radiating from her very being. "Okay, sis, I'm in. Whatever you need, I've got your back." Relief washed over me, knowing that I wouldn't be facing this battle alone. With Jenna by my side, I felt an overwhelming sense of strength, a certainty that I would emerge victorious. Over the next few weeks, we worked tirelessly, gathering every scrap of evidence we could find. Journals, recordings, photographs, nothing was left out. We built an ironclad case against Bryce, one that would leave no room for doubt or denial. As our arsenal grew, so too did my sense of empowerment. The fear and shame that had once shackled me began to dissipate, replaced by a burning desire for justice and retribution. Bryce remained blissfully unaware of the storm brewing, carrying on with his daily routine as if nothing were amiss. He would sneer at me whenever our paths crossed, his lips curling in a contemptuous sneer that only fueled my determination. "What's the matter, Marla?" he would taunt. "Still wallowing in self-pity, I see." I would meet his gaze, unflinching, biting back the biting retort that danced on the tip of my tongue. Soon, I told myself. Soon, he would pay for every ounce of pain and humiliation he had inflicted upon me. As the final pieces of our plan fell into place, I felt a sense of exhilaration coursing through my veins. The day of reckoning was fast approaching, and Bryce had no idea what was in store. He had made the mistake of underestimating me, of believing that I would cower and submit to his abuse forever. But no more. This time, I would be the one holding all the cards, and Bryce would learn the true meaning of suffering. The facade he had so carefully constructed was about to come crashing down, and I would be the one wielding the sledgehammer. The day of reckoning had finally arrived, and I could feel the adrenaline coursing through my veins. Jenna and I had spent weeks meticulously planning every detail, leaving no stone unturned in our quest for justice. It was the annual Wyatt family reunion, a gathering that Bryce had always insisted on attending, despite our crumbling marriage. This year, however, the event would serve as the perfect stage for his downfall. As we pulled into the driveway of my parents' home, I could see the familiar faces of extended family members already gathered on the lawn. Bryce plastered on his usual charming smile, ever the master of deception. "Remember, honey," he murmured, leaning in close, "we have to keep up appearances. No need to burden everyone with our personal issues." I fought back the urge to recoil from his touch, nodding in feigned agreement. Little did he know, the facade he had so carefully cultivated was about to be shattered beyond repair. We mingled with the crowd, making small talk and accepting well wishes from relatives we hadn't seen in ages. All the while, Jenna and I exchanged covert glances, silently signaling that it was time to put our plan into motion. After the initial greetings had concluded, Jenna cleared her throat, calling for everyone's attention. "If I could have a moment, please," she began, her voice ringing out across the lawn. "There's something important that needs to be addressed." Bryce shot me a quizzical look, but I remained impassive, my expression betraying nothing. "For too long, a grave injustice has been allowed to fester within our family," Jenna continued, her gaze sweeping across the gathered crowd. "An injustice that we can no longer turn a blind eye to." Murmurs of confusion rippled through the crowd, but Jenna pressed on, undeterred. "Bryce Wyatt has been emotionally and psychologically abusing his wife, Marla, for years. Today, we're going to put an end to his cruelty, once and for all." A hush fell over the gathering as Jenna's words sank in. Bryce's face contorted in a mixture of shock and outrage, but before he could interject, Jenna was already unveiling our carefully curated evidence. Audio recordings of Bryce's vicious tirades filled the air, his voice dripping with venom and contempt as he hurled insult after insult at me. Documented journal entries detailing the years of emotional torment were passed around, laying bare the depths of his cruelty. And then, the pièce de résistance, the video footage from our anniversary dinner, capturing Bryce's public humiliation in all its excruciating detail. As the scene played out on the screen, gasps and murmurs of outrage echoed through the crowd. Bryce stood frozen, his mouth agape as the carefully constructed facade he had so meticulously maintained came crashing down around him. "How could you?" My mother's voice cut through the tension, her eyes brimming with tears. "How could you treat my daughter that way?" Bryce stammered, grasping for an excuse, but no words came. He was a cornered animal, his true nature finally exposed for all to see. One by one, family members turned their backs on him, their expressions a mix of disgust and disbelief. Bryce's once charming demeanor had been stripped away, revealing the ugly truth that had been lurking beneath all along. As the weight of his actions bore down upon him, Bryce's veneer of confidence crumbled. He turned to me, his eyes pleading for mercy, for understanding. "Marla, please," he began, but I held up a hand, silencing him. "Enough," I said, my voice steady and unwavering. "You've had your chance to be a decent human being, and you squandered it. Now you're going to face the consequences of your actions." Bryce opened his mouth to protest, but thought better of it. In that moment, he knew he had lost the respect of his family, lost the facade of perfection he had so desperately clung to, lost any semblance of control over the situation. As he slunk away, a broken and defeated man, I felt a surge of vindication wash over me. Justice had been served, and the years of suffering and humiliation had finally been avenged. Jenna pulled me into a fierce embrace, her eyes shining with pride. "You did it, sis," she whispered. "You took that bastard down." I nodded, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. The road ahead would undoubtedly be challenging, but for the first time in years I felt truly free. Free from the shackles of Bryce's emotional abuse, free to reclaim my life and dignity. As the crowd dispersed, offering words of support and encouragement, I knew that this was just the beginning. Bryce's downfall was merely the first step in a journey towards healing and empowerment, and I was ready to embrace it, one step at a time. In the days following the explosive family reunion, the fallout from Bryce's exposure was swift and unrelenting. His life, once so meticulously constructed to project an image of perfection, lay in shattered ruins around him. I, on the other hand, felt a sense of liberation unlike anything I had experienced before. For years I had been shackled by Bryce's emotional abuse, my spirit slowly eroded by his cruelty. But now, with the truth laid bare, I was finally free. The first order of business was securing a divorce. Jenna had put me in touch with a formidable legal team, and within a matter of days the paperwork was filed. Bryce, still reeling from the public humiliation, offered little resistance. "You're making a mistake," he muttered during one of our brief encounters, his eyes downcast and defeated. "Think about what this will do to Derek." I leveled my gaze at him, feeling no shred of sympathy for the man who had tormented me for years. "I am thinking about Derek," I replied, my voice unwavering, "and I'm doing what's best for him, removing him from an environment of toxicity and abuse." Bryce flinched as if he had been struck, but I pressed on, relentless. "You've only got yourself to blame for this, Bryce. Your actions have consequences, whether you choose to acknowledge them or not." With that, I turned and walked away, leaving him to stew in the wreckage of his own making. As news of our impending divorce spread, the backlash against Bryce intensified. Friends and colleagues who had once praised his accomplishments now distanced themselves, unwilling to be associated with a man exposed as an emotional abuser. Even Derek, our once doting son, could no longer bring himself to look his father in the eye. "How could you treat Mom like that?" he asked during one of their strained encounters, his voice thick with emotion. "She sacrificed everything for this family, and you just... Words failed him, but his expression spoke volumes. The hero worship he had once held for Bryce had been shattered, replaced by a profound sense of disappointment and betrayal. Bryce, for his part, tried to cling to the tattered remnants of his former life. He lashed out at me, accusing me of turning his own family against him, of poisoning their minds with lies and deceit. "You're a vindictive, spiteful woman," he snarled during one of his tirades. "You'll regret this, Marla. Mark my words." But his threats rang hollow, devoid of the power and menace they once held. I simply stared back at him, unmoved by his pathetic attempts at intimidation. "I don't regret a thing, Bryce," I replied, my voice laced with a steely resolve. "For the first time in years, I'm living in the truth, something you've clearly never been able to handle." His face contorted in a mask of rage, but I had already turned away, leaving him to wallow in his own self-pity and delusion. With each passing day, Bryce's world continued to crumble around him. His once thriving career began to unravel as clients and business partners severed ties, unwilling to be associated with such a tarnished reputation. It was a sight to behold, watching this once proud man brought to his knees by the very demons he had unleashed upon me. And yet, I felt no pity, no shred of remorse for the suffering he now endured. This was justice, pure and simple, a reckoning long overdue. As the divorce proceedings neared their conclusion, I found myself reflecting on the long and arduous journey that had led me to this point. The years of suffering, the constant belittling and emotional abuse, the endless nights spent wondering where the man I had married had gone. But now, as I prepared to embark on a new chapter of my life, those memories seemed to fade into the distance. The shackles that had once bound me had been broken, and I was finally free to spread my wings and soar. Jenna pulled me into a fierce embrace as the final papers were signed, her eyes shining with a mixture of pride and relief. "You did it, sis," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "You survived the storm, and you came out stronger on the other side." I nodded, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in years, I felt a glimmer of hope, a belief that better days lay ahead, free from the toxicity and cruelty that had once defined my existence. As I stepped out into the world, a newfound sense of empowerment coursed through my veins. I was a survivor, a warrior who had faced the darkness head-on and emerged victorious. And Bryce? Well, he was nothing more than a footnote in my story, a mere obstacle that had been overcome, a reminder of the strength and resilience that burned within me. The future was mine to shape, and I intended to seize it with both hands, leaving the pain and suffering of the past far behind me. A new chapter was about to begin, and I couldn't wait to see what it had in store. Chapter 8: A New Beginning. The divorce had been finalized, and with it, a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. I was officially free from the shackles of Bryce's emotional abuse, free to start anew and reshape my life on my own terms. Of course, that didn't mean the process was easy. There were still hurdles to overcome, lingering scars from years of torment that would take time to heal. But I was committed to the journey, fueled by a newfound sense of determination and self-worth. The first order of business was securing a favorable settlement, one that would provide me with the financial means to build the life I deserved. Jenna's legal team had proven their mettle, negotiating a generous payout that encompassed a sizable portion of our shared assets. You earned every penny of this, Marla, Jenna assured me as we reviewed the settlement details. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. I nodded, still somewhat in disbelief that this chapter of my life was truly coming to a close. For so long I had been trapped in a cycle of fear and self-doubt, conditioned by Bryce's emotional manipulations to believe that I deserved nothing better. But now, with the evidence of his cruelty laid bare and the law on my side, I could finally break free from those toxic thought patterns. I was worthy of happiness, of respect, of building a life on my own terms. With the financial security provided by the settlement, I made the decision to invest a portion of the funds into a cause close to my heart, a foundation dedicated to supporting others suffering from the same chronic condition that had once been the catalyst for Bryce's abuse. It was a way for me to turn my pain into purpose, to ensure that no one else would have to endure the isolation and emotional torment that I had faced for so many years. This is amazing, Mom, Derek said, his eyes shining with pride as we toured the Foundation's newly opened headquarters. I can't think of a better way to help people and raise awareness. I pulled him into a tight embrace, overwhelmed by the surge of emotions welling up within me. For too long, I had shielded Derek from the harsh realities of my marriage, desperate to preserve his image of his father. But now, with the truth laid bare, we were able to forge a deeper connection, built on honesty and mutual respect. Thank you, sweetheart, I murmured, fighting back tears of joy. Your support means everything to me. As the foundation took shape and our outreach efforts began in earnest, I found myself bearing witness to the incredible resilience of the human spirit. The stories I encountered, the tales of perseverance in the face of overwhelming adversity, only served to strengthen my own resolve. I was no longer the broken, downtrodden woman who had once cowered in fear of her husband's wrath. I was a survivor, a warrior who had emerged from the ashes of emotional abuse, stronger and more determined than ever before. And Bryce? Well, his fate had been sealed the moment he chose to prioritize his own selfish desires over the well-being of his family. The once powerful businessman had become a pariah, his reputation in tatters and his professional prospects all but non-existent. I caught glimpses of him from time to time, a mere shadow of his former self, disheveled, haunted by the demons of his own making. Our paths would cross, and for a fleeting moment our eyes would meet, a silent acknowledgement of the chasm that now separated us. But I felt no pity, no remorse for the man who had inflicted so much pain and suffering upon me. This was the bed he had made for himself, and now he would lie in it, forever haunted by the consequences of his actions. As for me, I was focused on the future, a future that seemed brighter and more promising with each passing day. The foundation continued to grow, its reach extending to communities across the country, offering solace and support to those who had once felt so alone. And at the center of it all was a woman reborn, a phoenix risen from the ashes of emotional turmoil, spreading her wings and soaring towards new horizons. It was a new beginning, a fresh start that had been hard-won through years of struggle and perseverance. And as I looked ahead, I couldn't help but feel a sense of gratitude for the journey that had brought me to this point. The road had been long and arduous, but in the end, justice had prevailed. I had reclaimed my life, my dignity, and my sense of self-worth, and for that, I would be forever grateful. A new chapter was unfolding, and I intended to embrace it wholeheartedly, leaving the pain and anguish of the past firmly behind me. The future was mine, and I couldn't wait to see what it had in store.